Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my Champions League Matchday 5 predictions. This might be one of the tougher match days to predict out of them all. Not only do we just have international break, but some of these fixtures this week are very evenly matched. You've even got the best facing the best and the worst facing the worst. And even for the ones where it looks like there is a winner on paper, based on how the underdog has been performing, they could easily prevail. So I'll be straight up with you from the beginning. I know I've had some horrendous predictions in the past already, but I really wouldn't be surprised if this is one of my worst prediction videos for the Champions League Matchday series. Please take these predictions today with a grain of salt. Best of luck to your club if you're in the Champions League. Don't forget to leave an early like and subscribe if you're new. If you are enjoying this series, even when I make some bad calls, I still like to preview what's happened with each of these teams recently with you guys. So hope you all are enjoying regardless, and let's get into it. Starting off with that worst of the worst matchup, Ajax versus Benfica. Now, these are two historic clubs within the Champions League. However, basing it on their recent form in the competition itself, they are both rock bottom of the league standings. Yes, these are the only two clubs in the competition with 4-for-4 losses. Even debutants like Kairat have been doing better. What a disastrous campaign so far from both of these teams, and there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes for both. For Benfica's case, there's a lot of controversy going on with Rui Costa, their president. Many believe that he was not innovating the club to where they should be at, and regardless, the club members re-elected him. Domestically, they've been doing fine, to be honest, but yeah, within Europe, they have been horrible. Losing to Qarabag at the beginning, then they appointed Jose Mourinho, but Mourinho has yet to lead his team to a goal in the Champions League since that loss to Qarabag. Now, to be fair to Benfica, they have been facing some really tough opponents in the competition. They've had to play two Premier League clubs already, but still, of course, they should be striving for better, and now they very much need to pick up 3 points against an Ajax, which I would argue are looking even in more of a worrying situation than Benfica are. So far, they've conceded the most goals in the Champions League. They only scored 1 goal against Chelsea, where they conceded 5 there. And this side have yet to pick up a single win in the entire month of November. They sacked their manager Hetinga for the poor results. They've been on the hunt for a new manager for some time, but already received a few rejections, even from their former manager Ten Hag. Not just that, also their technical director also announced that he will be resigning literally right after he sacked Hetinga. Keep in mind, he only became the CEO about a year and a half ago. So yeah, Ajax obviously been holding on to an interim manager for now, and based on the results, it is not going to plan. Both these sides have a few unfortunate injuries. For Benfica's case, they might be missing Luke Bakio for this fixture, but I still think Benfica are the slight favorites in this. Could be a draw, but I'm leaning towards Benfica winning this 2-0. Let's move on now to Galatasaray versus Royal Union. Galatasaray have been on a roll. Ever since I made a short roasting the Turkish clubs within Europe, Galatasaray have been winning everything since, including starting that horrible chain reaction for Liverpool, to then defeating Bodø, Glimt, and Ajax, scoring 3 goals against them each. What a wake-up call for Jim Bom Bom ever since they had that heavy defeat to Frankfurt in the first match day. The only match they lost since then was to Kocaelispor, a match I had the privilege to attend. I made a whole vlog about it. If you want to check it out, I'll leave a link in the description. They also just squeezed through over the weekend with a 3-2 victory, definitely taking advantage of their opposition's red card. Meanwhile, for Royal Union, they are in the complete opposite situation of Galatasaray when it comes to their Champions League form. Unlike Galatasaray, they had a phenomenal start, but have been getting horribly crushed ever since. Domestically, they're a very convincing side that can handle anyone on their day. And in the Champions League, they always seem to put off a good fight, but eventually they run out of gas. I think majority of goals they did concede in the Champions League were in the second half of each of their matches. So yeah, this club obviously play with heart. They have some very cool players on this team. For example, Promise David, I mentioned him loads of times, along with McAllister's bro, who recently got an Argentina call-up. Galatasaray look like the stronger squad on paper, but there are quite a lot of injuries right now. Victor Osimhen is looking doubtful. There is a tiny chance he might play in this match, but it's still a bit too uncertain. Yunus Akun is certainly out though. Singo out injured too. It will be one of the most Galatasaray things to do, to be on a 3-match winning streak in the Champions League and then blow it to a team like Royal Union, who are making their debut in the competition. Maybe they won't be as electric with those injuries, but I still think they can squeeze through for a 2-1 win against Royal Union. I think they'll put off a good fight. Now, this fixture, a clear underdog, but one that everyone is kind of afraid to rule out, especially with them at home. Bodø Glimt versus Juventus. I mentioned it in many videos now. Bodø Glimt is not a place you want to travel to. Many teams have already complained with how they play on artificial turf, and with Juventus' form recently, they're not going to have fun on this pitch. Juventus love draws almost as much as the Slovenian national team. Igor Tudor was getting many. They eventually turned into losses. He got sacked. Spalletti then earned them their first win in 2 months, but then the rest of his matches followed in draws as well. It's crazy that such a giant in Italian football are going through this right now. They do have one of their key defenders out injured injured though, Bremer, but still I thought their attack would be a little bit more clutch, especially with the pickups they got over the summer, like Jonathan David and Zegrova, Openda as well. Dusan Vlahovic started to turn up, but again seems to be falling a bit. I do not trust in Juventus right now whatsoever. Now last time, Bodø Glimt did have a home match against Monaco. I was hopeful Bodø could pick up their first Champions League win there, but unfortunately they failed with a 1-0 defeat. They're definitely going to be desperate though to get their first Champions League win, and they already have a fantastic resume against the Italian clubs. Will Juventus now be the next victim? I'm going to say it's close, but not enough. Bodø pull off the draw though. It finishes 1-1. Definitely do not trust Juventus to win right now, but we'll see. They should be the favorites. Another Italian team that I find very hard to trust right now, at least within Europe, is Napoli. And they're taking on Qarabag next. Napoli have only picked up one win so far in the Champions League, and it was a narrow one to Sporting. This side keep rotating their injuries through their star players, but in the last Champions League matchday, they failed to score a single goal against Frankfurt, lost to Bologna right after, but picked up their form after the international break, defeating Atalanta 3-1. Meanwhile, Qarabag have been sensational, electric. They have been one of the most entertaining teams in the Champions League so far. No one expected it as well. This is their only second time playing in the competition, defeating Benfica, Copenhagen, losing to Atletico, but picked up a 2-2 draw to Chelsea. So Conte should be scared because his resume within Europe is horrible, to be honest. He's one of the top managers in the entire world, but the furthest he made it in the Champions League is the quarterfinals. And he should fear Qarabag, as Napoli have a good amount of injuries, especially in the midfield. Not to mention Lorenzo Luca has a suspension, so Holju needs to turn up here. I think I've gotten all of my Qarabag picks wrong so far. The one time I predicted them to win, they let me down losing to Athletic Club. So please, especially out of all my predictions, take this one with a grain of salt. I see this one finishing in a 1-1 draw. But at this point, I'm not surprised anymore if Qarabag pull off the victory. Watch out for Bayramov. He's a fullback and the top goal scorer for the club. My predictions are true. Not a great week for the Italian club so far. But let's move on now to Marseille versus Newcastle. Marseille have been slightly tough to gauge. At moments, they're looking like one of the most electric teams in Europe. But in the last Champions League matchday, they lost to a team that were winless for some time, but now picked themselves up, scoring 8 goals in the last 2 games. Last matchday was the craziest, where they beat Nice 5-1 away. Mason Greenwood so far in Ligue 1 has 13 direct goal contributions in 12 matches. But yeah, within Europe, not looking too pretty for them. They only picked up 1 win and 3 losses. Unfortunate that they had to face Real Madrid so soon, but they definitely should have taken care of Sporting and Atalanta. Both decent sides, but still, with Marseille's form right now and the players they possess, no excuse really for them to be in the position that they are right now. Now it's not going to be any easier. Newcastle are looking pretty decent themselves, just defeating Manchester City over the weekend. They have been quite inconsistent in the Prem though. It was quite a shock that they did defeat City. I mean, they lost to West Ham and Brentford. In both those matches, they conceded 3 goals. But in the Champions League, they're going all out. They've gone 3 clean sheets in 4 matches. Their only loss so far was to Barcelona, and it was a close affair. Voltemade, what a player he is. Harvey Barnes coming in clutch against City. Bruno Guimaraes dictating the midfield. This one is tough. If Newcastle were home, I'd say they're definitely the favorites here, but Marseille, like I said, have been electric just at random moments throughout the season. Maybe they're on their good wave, but I don't trust them right now in Europe. One of these 50-50 fixtures for me where I'm not surprised if I'm wrong, but I am leaning towards Newcastle to pick up a 3-1 victory. I know, I'm sorry. Moving on now to Dortmund versus Villarreal. 2 sides I don't trust right now. Villarreal have been looking quite good domestically, to be fair, and I mentioned some of their many new incredible signings in the other videos. But they have yet to pick up a win in the Champions League, and they had to face Pafos, losing in that match. The other fixtures, though, were definitely a bit more difficult, to be fair. Whereas for Dortmund, in their first 3 matches, they scored 4 goals in each, but conceded 4 at the end to Manchester City. And since that loss to City, they have not picked up a win yet, even drawing over the weekend. Sula and Bensabani looking doubtful a bit with injuries, so they could leak some goals easily with Villarreal's top talent, but Dortmund's attack in Europe love to turn up, so I do see them scoring quite a lot. I think this one will be a high-scoring match. Dortmund just win 3-2. Moving on to this historic matchup, I hope Drogba's in attendance. Chelsea versus Barcelona. Both these sides did underestimate their opponents in the last Champions League matchday. A draw with Qarabag, like I mentioned, for Chelsea, and Barcelona drew with Club Brugge 3-3. Forbes scoring a brace in that match. Barcelona do not look so defensively sound. And a huge loss for them now is that Pedri will not be available. He's out injured. Chelsea also have their injury concerns. Cole Palmer has been absent for quite a while now, but I'd say recently they've been adapting quite well. Sure, that draw to Qarabag, but they haven't lost a match all month. Did get convincing wins against 19th and 20th place in the Premier League, but But still, I think that win against Burnley deserves more credit than it will receive, as Turf Moor is a tough place to travel to away. Pedro Neto has been such a difference maker, and maybe Chelsea can win that midfield battle against Barcelona, the likes of Enzo Fernandez and Caicedo fit. Barcelona over the weekend got a huge win against Athletic Club though, beating them 4-0. It's their first clean sheet since September. Yamal back and fit is huge for the team, obviously. He was immense in that match. So again, another very balanced match, I think. Both have their key injuries, both in some decent form right now, just not entirely perfect, I would say. For me, it's either going to be a 2-2 draw or a 3-2 win for Barca. I'll stay safe and pick the draw, though. Manchester City versus Leverkusen now. Now, Man City really need to pick themselves up after that heartbreak to Newcastle. Leverkusen have seemed to have the biggest wake-up call ever since they lost to Bayern. They got their first Champions League win of the season, destroyed Heidenheim 6-0, and got another very solid victory against Wolfsburg away. Man City obviously have a decent resume against the German teams, though. They also just defeated Dortmund, like I mentioned, 4-1. They're playing at the Etihad as well. They've obviously had their random flukes throughout the season. Not a perfect team right now. Whenever Haaland does not score, they lose, but I think he will get on the score sheet in this match. Already very familiar with the German clubs, obviously. They should not underestimate Leverkusen, but I think they'll win 4-2, especially with a lot of Leverkusen's midfield injured or suspended. We move on now to Slavia Praha versus Athletic Club. This is what I mean. Each of the times you see a quote-unquote underdog play in this match day, they're coming up against a side that are not looking to be so convincing right now. I really would not be surprised if Slavia Praha turn up here, especially with them at home. Athletic Club just got destroyed by Barcelona, and throughout the season have just not been doing good enough. They right now have more losses than wins in La Liga. It's quite surprising right now just given how well they did last season. Some forward options are still out injured like Inaki Williams, Marak and Senadi. Nico Williams was gone for a while, but he's finally back. Even prior to his injury though, he was not looking the most convincing. Well, Slavia Praha are undefeated in Czechia. They're still searching for their first win in the Champions League, but look at their scores. 2 draws, one of them being to Atalanta. The only hammering so far have been some of the most highly regarded clubs in the competition. They overall have a very underrated midfield and defensive unit and can easily throw off Athletic Club with their shaky form. I'm tempted to go for that upset and say Slavia Praha pull off the 1-0 victory or even just get a 0-0 draw, something of that sort. Definitely possible, but I will say that Athletic Club do find their form here and they pull off the 3-1 victory. Must win though. If they fail to do it here, they might not qualify for the knockouts. Another underdog I'm too afraid to roll out now. Pafos coming up against Monaco. Like I mentioned, Pafos did defeat Villarreal last time 1-0. While Monaco overcame that underdog that I highly regarded, Bodø Glimt, even while playing away, they won 1-0. But since then, it has been so poor. 2 consecutive 4-1 defeats. Obviously not the most trustworthy side. I'm afraid to underestimate them as well. They have some great players, and it's nice to see Pogba finally make his return to football. Yes, after 800 days or so, he finally got his first appearance. They're struggling to all these other teams. Really makes me question how they're going to do against Pafos. This side know how to lock down defensively, unless they're playing Bayern. In their other 3 matches, they got clean sheets. In their 2 0-0 matches, they conceded an early red card and still pulled off the draw. They're not going to play a pretty game, but if Monaco are struggling so much, I think they can frustrate them here, especially if they're the home side. David Luiz, still strong at 38 years old, balling out of the Champions League. He started in all of these matches, by the way. If Pafos stick to their style of play, I could easily see Monaco not conceding, but if Monaco just get on the score sheet once, that could make Pafos completely fall apart and go into panic mode. Playing it safe, you gotta choose Monaco just with the players they got to their disposal, but I believe in Pafos to a degree. I think they can pull off the 0-0 draw. See, again, another very tough matchup to predict. Copenhagen versus Kairat. Another very, very long journey for the Kazakhstani club, and they very much gave Inter a scare in Milan. So this side are clearly not letting the distance phase them anymore. And Copenhagen have the same exact point tally right now, not looking anywhere nearly as tactically sound. In their last 2 matches, they conceded 4 goals each. Both of these sides obviously have so much to play for to pick up their first win, and they're very much looking at each other and knowing that they are capable of getting 3 points. Copenhagen at home, though, are usually a tough side to break down. I really would not be surprised if Kairat sneak through with a win here. Could see it finishing 1-0 for the Kazakhstani club, but I am going to go for Copenhagen to pull off the 2-1 victory. Let's take a look now at Olympiacos versus Real Madrid. Definitely a clear favorite on paper here, but Real Madrid cannot underestimate traveling away to Greece. Olympiacos were so close to getting their first Champions League win until the United States international equalized in the 93rd for PSV, Ricardo Pepi. Olympiacos unfortunately having to face both Barcelona and Real Madrid. They already got hammered by one of them. Cagey draws against the other underdogs in this competition. I saw a lot of people were expecting much more from this Olympiacos side, but so far not looking too good. They very much need to pick themselves up if they want any chance to make it to the knockouts. But it's going to be a tough order against the most successful club in this competition. That being said, things have not been so pretty for Los Blancos. There's supposedly some drama behind the scenes with some of their players having attitude towards their manager Xabi Alonso. And I'm recording this video while they're playing Elche. It's halftime right now. It's 0-0. I'll post the actual result while I'm editing this video, but if that result stays, they have not scored in their last 3 matches, as their last result in La Liga was 0-0 to Rayo Vallecano. It might not be as crazy of a victory like Barcelona were able to achieve against Olympiacos, but I still think Real Madrid got this. I'm saying it finishes 3-1. All right, let's move on now to Sporting versus Club Brugge. What a difficult one to gauge once again. Both these teams are totally capable of getting 3 points. Both picking up draws in the last Champions League match day. Like I mentioned, Club Brugge scored 3 against Barcelona, while Sporting held off Juventus to a draw. And their goalkeeper Silva was cracked in that match. A few unfortunate unknown return dates though for Sporting, and Pedro Gonçalves in question. Lots of great players on this team though, like Hillman, Luis Suarez. Club Brugge have been missing Mignolet, but have been doing okay without him. This team are too unpredictable in the Champions League. Had a flying start against Monaco, but then struggled to Atalanta and conceded loads to both Bayern and Barcelona. If Club Brugge were playing at home, I would give them more benefit in a fixture like this, but I think Sporting have the slight edge. I'll say they just win 2-1. Not going to be easy though. Another headache. I'm telling you, I'm not confident about this video. Frankfurt versus Atalanta. Since that Liverpool loss in late October, Frankfurt had been undefeated, obviously counting that Dortmund result as a draw in the DFB Pokal. Getting Napoli to struggle even at their own home ground, and still on phase when they're away. They scored 4 against Köln this weekend. Good amount of their top talent in the midfield though is injured. If Uzun's not playing, that's a huge loss. Meanwhile, Atalanta are too uncertain of a club. They just sacked Juric. Now they've gotten Palladino at the helm, but in his 1 match managed, he's gotten a loss to Napoli. There are many quality players on this team, but I still feel like they're kind of rebuilding their identity. Frankfurt are obviously a tough opponent to overcome, especially with Atalanta having to travel away. I see Frankfurt winning this one. I'm going to go for 3-1. Oh boy. Liverpool versus PSV. Liverpool, impossible to trust right now. Even with that Anfield boost, it no longer applies after this weekend. Losing to a side that were in relegation zone prior to that match, they got smashed by Nottingham Forest 3-0. If Liverpool now lose to PSV, surely Slot will get sacked. It's obviously not been easy with the injuries. Alisson should be back, but now Wirtz is in doubt. All this money was being spent, and there has been little to no progress this season compared to last. Sure, Liverpool had that hopeful spell in the beginning of November, defeating Aston Villa, defeating Real Madrid, but after these 2 consecutive 3-0 losses, they have now lost their last 8 out of 11 matches in all competitions. While PSV are dangerous, sure they kept it narrow over the weekend, but they still got a win. But in the other fixtures, they've been scoring loads in the Eredivisie. A draw to Olympiacos, sure, but prior to that in the Champions League, 6 goals against Napoli. An electric team like this can easily throw off a fragile Liverpool. And their whole team is pulling the strings. You've got Till, the top goal scorer, Saibari only behind him, Veerman has been brilliant, Perisic still balling out at his age. Every single Liverpool fan should be nervous. PSV are no joke, while Liverpool have been. You easily could go for PSV here, and I would not blame you whatsoever if you choose the Dutch side. But with Slot's expertise within Dutch football, I think he's going to prevail here and save his job at Liverpool Football Club. I'm going to go for a Liverpool 3-1 win. Again, though, won't be surprised if I'm wrong. And now these last 3 matches are all bangers, starting off with Atletico Madrid versus Inter. Inter, along with Arsenal and Bayern, are the only 3 clubs to have 4-for-4 wins so far in the Champions League. Full credit to Inter, of course, but I gotta say, not as impressive as Arsenal and Bayern, because literally all the opponents they faced so far have been underdogs. And like I mentioned in their last match against Kairat, it was close. Like I said though, full credit to them, they only conceded 1 goal in the Champions League so far. Atleti throughout the season have been really strong at home, but away, quite weak. Defensively, they've been a bit of a mess, but the attacking personnel they have is next level. Julian Alvarez, the top goal scorer. Griezmann still going strong. Simeone's son pulling through wonderfully. Top assister so far. Inter just lost the Milano Derby over the weekend. They keep falling short to their rivals recently. Other than that, they've been quite good, apart from that slip to Napoli away. They've definitely been showing more strength at home, but still cannot rule them out in an away fixture like this. Atleti are unpredictable, but I have them just defeating Inter here with a 2-1 victory. Now we move on to the battle of the most informed teams in Europe. Arsenal versus Bayern. First versus second place of the Champions League. first place of each of their domestic leagues. Arsenal really might be en route to win the Premier League this time, unless they slip like they have in the past. But that 4-1 victory against Tottenham definitely has them feeling good. And you really gotta admire how this side have been able to perform and adapt under the pressure. I mean, Gabriel is not going to be fit for this fixture, and Arsenal are still getting incredible victories without him. But this has been their best defender so far this season. They even had to adapt without Odegaard for some time. While Bayern, they'll need to learn to adapt without Lucho. He's got a 3 matchday ban now after that foul against Hakimi. It's funny though, because after the last Champions League matchday, Bayern set the record of the most consecutive wins at the start of a season for any club within the top 5 leagues, while Arsenal didn't concede a single goal in 8 matches. But both of them on the same weekend of November picked up a 2-2 draw. Not a horrible scenario though, because both bounced back incredibly after the international break, Bayern scoring 6 goals against Freiburg. Olise, Harry Kane looking so strong. There's going to be so much build-up for this game. Obviously, both these sides, if things continue to go the way they are probably going to finish within the top 8 of the Champions League. But it's such a point to prove for Arsenal, as they've had some very heavy defeats to Bayern throughout history. Arsenal obviously still looking quite solid defensively, even without Gabriel, but now with a huge club like Bayern Munich, will they still be able to keep themselves tactically sound? I think Arteta's probably going to try to play defensively in this fixture, rely on those counter-attacking moments, because Bayern are just such a strong side. Big test coming up, of course, for both these clubs. Anything's possible. Most informed teams in Europe. I'm having Bayern as the slightest of favorites though in this one. I'm going for a 2-1 victory, even at the Emirates. And the final match we're looking at is a repeat of the UEFA Super Cup earlier on this season. PSG versus Tottenham. Tottenham with one of the biggest bottle jobs in that match. They were about to win yet another piece of silverware until PSG came back out of nowhere to do the job on penalties. Tottenham have just had way too many dips throughout this season though. Of course, everyone went crazy after that win against Copenhagen where we saw that Van de Ven goal, but they suffered 2 defeats before that match. But now, like I mentioned, that heavy defeat to Arsenal, their biggest rivals. Huge blow for Thomas Frank. They did not play well in that match. What a smart move by him, by the way, to jokingly not know who Eze was in that press conference prior to the match, as Eze stole the show with that hat trick. Yeah, and obviously Tottenham's job is not getting any easier. Now they have to face the previous Champions League winners. PSG did lose to Bayern in the last match day, but it was a really head-to-head fixture. They could have come out on top. Enrique is also trying to adapt with the injuries he has present, like Dembele and Doué. Hakimi's also out until Christmas, and then he'll be playing in AFCON, so we won't be seeing him for some time. But with how Tottenham have been playing, I think PSG are definitely still the favorites in this. If Tottenham were in a bit more convincing form, I might give them more sympathy here, but I think PSG can get a somewhat one-sided victory here, especially with them at home. Brandon Johnson's also not eligible for this fixture. I'm going to say PSG hand Tottenham another consecutive 4-1 defeat. Well, there you have it, guys. Those are all my predictions for match day 5. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to leave a like on this video if you are enjoying this series. Of course, on this channel, international football is the main priority, but I do still want to talk about the Champions League throughout the rest of the season. This will probably be one of the more exciting match days though, apart from the final one, of course, because that'll be the most decisive. But yeah, look at all those incredible head-to-head fixtures. Like I said, the toughest one in my opinion to predict so far. We'll see what happens after, of course. Thank you all so much for making it to the end of this video. I'll see you all very, very soon. Take care. Boa noite.